No, I choose people who don't want to be written about, on the
Right.
whole, whose lives are shrouded in mystery and they want to hide their secrets. And I just love digging away to find out what they don't want us to know. I wrote 4 years ago a book about Prince Charles, and it was a story about how he had rehabilitated himself after Diana's death and how Camilla also had to be rehabilitated, and it was a number one. It was a fascinating story. So when Meghan came along into the scene, I just thought, this is fascinating. How is this going to play out? To tell the truth, I spoke to very few friends of Meghan because she put a fatwa on anyone talking to me who she could. So I sent off dozens and dozens of emails to her friends, and most of them didn't even reply. And obviously I spoke to her father, who loves her still very much, and said, in the end, whatever she is, she's still my daughter. You can't beat the real story. I mean, that's the excitement of writing these sort of books, that in the end, nothing beats the truth, the real facts.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. So, we need to talk about something that's been absolutely blowing up in the royal world. And honestly, it's gone way beyond just royal watchers at this point. We're talking about Meghan Markle's pregnancy story, or should I say stories, because it seems like there are quite a few versions floating around. And the big news, this whole surrogacy scandal, this idea that Meghan's pregnancies might not have been what they seemed, it's officially gone mainstream. I mean, seriously, when first started seeing some of these clips and hearing these claims, I genuinely thought it was a parody. Like, is this AI? Is someone just messing with us? Because some of the things people are pointing out are just so wild. But then you start looking closer and you realize, wait, this isn't Al. This is actually what people are saying, and they're backing it up with some pretty compelling observation. One of the first things that jumped out at me, and no, a lot of you stomach looking fake, just the way it sat, the texture, the color difference, it just didn't look quite right to some people. And once you see it, it's kind of hard to unsee. Now, you know how every good fairy tale starts with once upon a time? Well, it seems like Meghan Markle's version of her pregnancy story starts with depending on which interview you watch. And that's a huge problem when you're talking about something as significant as having children. This is woman who, let's be honest, has a reputation for a narrative shift. We've seen it with her family, with her relationship with her father, and now it's front and center with her pregnancy. According to the public narrative, the Duchess of Drama, as some people call her, has managed to turn one of life's most natural, beautiful experiences, pregnancy, into something that feels more like a Netflix anthology series. One episode, it's all glowing motherhood, avocado toast, and picture-perfect moments. Then the very next episode, it's a near-tragic ordeal full of trauma and distress that no one could possibly understand. And even her biggest fans, the people who have stood by her through everything, are starting to whisper that the story keeps changing faster than the British weather. It's like Meghan Markle told the world she was a fraud, and maybe we all should have listened a little closer. Sources close to royal watchers joke that if you want to track Meghan's pregnancy timeline, you basically need a PhD in plot twists. One minute, she's nesting peacefully in the sunshine. The next, she's recalling some deep trauma that apparently only surfaced years later. It's a narrative roller coaster, and right in the middle of it all stands Tom Bower. Now, Tom Bower, if you don't know, is the biographer. He's not someone who's going to scream and shout and directly accuse anyone of anything. That's not his style. What he does is much more effective and arguably much more devastating. Bower Doku. He quietly highlights the details that just don't sit right, and then he lets you, the viewer, the reader, draw your own conclusion. Because sometimes the most shocking exposure isn't what's said out loud. It's what's left unsaid or what's presented in such a way that the inconsistencies just scream at you. And when it comes to Meghan's pregnancy story, let's just say that according to Bower's research, there's a whole lot more mystery than there is maternity. People online have been pointing out things like, remember that picture of Meghan at the Albert Hall? How many weeks pregnant was she supposed to be then? 8 weeks, right? But she looked like she was at least 5 months pregnant. That's a pretty big visual discrepancy right there. And then there are other things like her skin tone. People are asking, why is the belly several shades browner than anywhere else? Skin, when it stretches, usually gets lighter, not darker. And then there's the whole mystery of where that owl. Alleged 65 IBS of weight gain actually went because if you look at her arms, her face, her legs, her bust, they all look pretty much the same. So where did all that weight go? It just doesn't add up for a lot of people. But what Tom Bauer uncovered next, and what he's just laid out for everyone to see, made even the palace whisper, "Wait, that doesn't make sense." From the outside, Meghan's pregnancy story looked picture perfect, right? Designer dresses, glowing interviews, a royal baby on the way. But as sources point out, that same story somehow evolved every single time she retold it. It started as a cheerful account of baby kicks and morning smoothies, and then it slowly transformed into something much deeper, much darker, and frankly far more confusing. Do you guys remember how Meghan actually refused to use the hospital that was typically used by royals? And she refused to use all of the normal medical staff, too. There was all this weirdness around the timing of Archie's birth. Public observers noticed that her tone seemed to shift with each new platform. On one show, she was playful, joking about late-night cravings. On another, she was describing emotional turmoil and fear. Then came the podcast episode where she spoke about trauma that allegedly changed her forever. It wasn't just one story. It was several competing versions, all dressed in the same crown. And Tom Bauer, being the quiet investigator he is, doesn't shout inconsistency. He just places these stories side by side and lets those gaps speak louder than any accusation ever could. In his view, the issue isn't what Meghan said. It's how effortlessly her narrative seemed to adapt. Almost like each retelling was curated to fit a new audience, a new brand, or a new wave of sympathy. To the casual listener, it might sound like emotional evolution. To Bauer, it looks a lot more like a performance in progress. Okay, so we've been talking about how Meghan's story just seems to adapt, right? And this isn't just about what she says, but even how she describes her own body during pregnancy. I mean, remember that clip where she's talking about gaining 65 IBS with both pregnancies? She's like, "Oh my God, I'm so tiny." And then she's talking about wearing these 5 inches pointy stilettos with this enormous bump and her tiny little ankles bracing themselves. She even said all of my weight was in the front. And she's joking about clinging to Harry so she doesn't faceplant. It's like, how on earth? But here's the thing. People are looking at this and they're going, wait a minute. If she gained 65 pounds and it was all in the front, why do her arms look so skinny? Why does her face, her legs, her bust, why do they all look pretty much the same? Where did that 65 pounds actually go if it wasn't distributed like a typical pregnancy? And that's where Tom Bauer's notes really start to connect the dots. And one thing becomes disturbingly clear. The pregnancy story may have changed, but the questions it raised never did. But honestly, the real chaos, the absolute mind-bending part begins when the timelines just stop making sense. When it comes to Meghan's pregnancy timelines, even the most devoted royal watchers, the ones who follow every single detail, have had to grab a notepad and start mapping things out. Because according to public discussion, the dates surrounding her announcements, her public appearances, and her supposed due periods feel like puzzle pieces from 3 different boxes. One minute she's described as newly pregnant in an interview that aired months after Archie was born. Another time she's recalling nesting during a period that just doesn't quite fit the palace calendar. It's like what? Sources say Tom Bauer, with his super sharp, "I noticed something really subtle here." It's the way these blurred overlaps create more confusion than clarity. It's not that the dates are outright wrong, necessarily. It's that they seem soft. They bend just enough to match the mood of the moment or whatever narrative she's trying to push. In one account, she's weeks from delivery. In another, she's just discovering the news. And for Bauer, that gentle shifting isn't some random coincidence. He sees it as storytelling at work. I mean, it's actually torture to listen to that woman now, because every other word out of her mouth to some people feels like a lie. None of it really makes sense when you start putting it all together. And observers online have absolutely turned these timelines into a digital detective board. They're circling headlines, comparing photos, questioning how official events could possibly align with supposed maternity stages. And while Bauer never points a finger directly, he does underline an uncomfortable truth. In royal life, details matter, especially when they don't align. To him, this isn't about some grand conspiracy. It's about consistency. Because when the calendar refuses to cooperate, credibility starts to crack. And once the dates begin to wobble, the next chapter, the medical mystery, becomes even harder to ignore. If the timelines made people raise an eyebrow, the medical details made them lean all the way forward. According to sources familiar with these Royal Watcher debates, Meghan's accounts of her hospital experiences read less like actual medical records and more like evolving screenplay. One story painted this calm, almost glamorous delivery, laughter, lighthearted moments, even a cheeky fast food stop. But then in later interviews, the same exact event became this whole dramatic tale of danger and distress, marked by alleged complications and medical urgency. And this is where it gets really wild. There's a doctor who's come out and said there is no way on earth that any doctor would allow a woman with a geriatric pregnancy high risk and with 2 epidurals to leave the hospital within an hour of giving birth. Even casual viewers, not just the hardcore Royal Watchers, started noticing this pattern. Every time she retold something, it seemed designed to get a specific reaction, maybe admiration or pity or even outrage. The story wasn't just about being pregnant anymore. It was like a mirror reflecting whatever image Meghan wanted the world to see in that exact moment. And through all this, Bauer never said, "She's eyeing." He just laid out these emotional pivot points, the kind that make you really wonder where the authentic stuff ends and the performance begin. But here's the thing, the real intrigue isn't just about the emotion she showed. It's about the silence that came after it. The stuff she didn't say that somehow spoke even louder. And that's where Bauer's investigation really takes a sharp turn. Sometimes the loudest part of the story isn't what's said, it's the quiet between the sentences. And honestly, Meghan's silences have become almost as famous as her speeches. For every emotional detail she'd share in an interview, there'd be this other moment she'd just totally avoid, that a detail skipped, a timeline left blurry, a question smoothly redirected with a smile. Those gaps, Tom Bauer suggests, that's where the real mystery live. He doesn't accuse her, he just observes. He points out how selective storytelling can actually be way more powerful than just being completely transparent. When one interview dives deep into some emotional trauma, but totally skips over basic logistics, that omission, that silence, it becomes its own kind of statement. It's the "why didn't she mention" that keeps everyone buzzing and speculate. Public perception has taken those gaps and turned them into open invitations for everyone to guess. Some people see it as privacy, others see it as a calculated strategy. Either way, the result is the same. Those unanswered questions echo way louder than any confession ever could. Bauer calls this the art of narrative restraint, where what's left unsaid actually carries more weight than any headline. In the world of royal storytelling, silence can be a shield or it can be a performance. And Meghan, whether she means to or not, has mastered both. But while silence creates mystery, Bauer's next discovery shows how he uses that very quiet to build something even more potent. Doubt without accusation, exposure without blame. And that's where you really see his genius. Tom Bauer doesn't shout. He doesn't point fingers. He just lays out the facts one after another, and then he lets the silence between them do all the heavy lifting. His approach is almost surgical. He's not calling Meghan dishonest. He just shows you enough inconsistent, enough things that don't line up to make you start wondering yourself. It's such a precise method that apparently even legal experts are impressed with how he walks that super fine line between exposing something and actually defaming someone. People often describe Bauer as the guy who never has to raise his voice to drop a bombshell. Instead of being all sensational, he creates this subtle tension. He presents Meghan's own words in chronological order, and then he just steps back as the contradictions quietly build their own verdict. It's not an attack. It's more like architecture. The brilliance of Bauer's strategy is all in that restraint. By never directly accusing, he comes across as totally fair. By not telling you what to think, he invites readers to form their own conclusion. And in that illusion of neutrality, the impact just multiplies. Audiences feel like they're detectives, not just spectators. You're not being told what to think. You're discovering it for yourself. And according to media analysts, That's the real secret to Bauer's lasting influence. He doesn't destroy reputation. He just lets them crumble under the weight of their own inconsistencies. And just when you think he said all he can say, Bauer drops this final twist. It's not about Meghan's actions anymore, but about what her storytelling itself truly reveals. Because the shocking truth was never really the pregnancy itself. It was the pattern. When Tom Bauer finally pulls back the curtain, the big revelation isn't some bombshell about secret medical files or hidden doku. It's something way more psychological. According to sources close to his research, Bauer's real discovery is that Meghan's stories don't just evolve by accident. They adapt. Each time she tells a story, it seems to serve a new purpose. Maybe it's sympathy during a scandal or strength during a backlash or empowerment during an interview. He suggests it's not a lie, it's saw strategy. The public narrative often frames this as Meghan's unique way of telling stories, emotional, cinematic, and really curated. She doesn't just recount experiences, she remixes them for maximum impact. One story can become three, each one tailored for the biggest emotional punt. And while that might make her a super compelling speaker, it also makes her timelines really hard to trust. What Bauer allegedly reveals is that what's truly shocking isn't the pregnancy itself. It's how the story just refuses to settle down. The facts blur, the tone shifts, and the meaning changes depending on where she's telling to him. This whole pattern exp0ses a kind of narrative restlessness. This deep need to always sources say Bauer doesn't call this manipulation. He calls it performance instinct. It's that same instinct that can make a person unforgettable or totally unbelievable, in his eyes. Meghan's gift is also her biggest liability. The power to reshape the truth until it feels like fiction wrapped in sincerity. And that's the big revelation Bauer leaves us with. Not that Meghan lied, but that her storytelling works like a prism, turning one single event into many dazzling reflections, none of them exactly identical. One haunting question just lingers. Is the truth hidden in the gaps, or is it the gaps that create the truth? Tom Bauer's work leaves us with that unsettling choice. The story of Meghan's pregnancies, it seems, is less about what happened and more about how it's told. And in that telling, the lines between fact and narrative blur into something almost hypnotic. The audience is left to wonder, what's real, what's crafted, and does it even matter? Because the more the story shifts, the more it stays the same. A tale of motherhood, of power, of image, of control. And at the center, a woman whose words keep changing, but whose intent seems eerily clear. Bauer's investigation didn't just raise questions about a pregnancy. It raised questions about the nature of truth itself in the age of curated stories. And as the royal world keeps watching, one thing becomes undeniable. The real drama was never just about babies or timelines or medical records. It was about whose story gets told, how it's told, and who gets to believe it. In the end, the biggest mystery isn't Meghan's pregnancies. It's the power of a story to rewrite reality itself. The curtain closes on this chapter, but the conversation has just begun. What do you think? Was it artful storytelling or something more? Share your thoughts, and let's keep unraveling the threads. The story doesn't end here. It just changes form. The royal narrative is a living thing, constantly evolving, adapting, and reshaping itself. And at the heart of it all, one question lingers. What's real, and what's just a really good story? The audience is left to wonder, to speculate, and to decide for themselves. The investigation into Meghan's pregnancies may be over, but the conversation has just begun. The public is still buzzing with questions, theories, and opinions. And as the story continues to unfold, one thing is certain. The truth is far from simple. It's complex, it's messy, and it's open to interpretation. So what's next? Will there be more revelations? More interviews? More denials? The royal world is holding its breath, waiting to see what happens next. One thing is for sure. The story of Meghan Markle is far from over. It's a tale of power, of image, of control, and of the stories we tell ourselves. And as we wait for the next chapter, let's take a moment to reflect on the journey so far. A journey that's been full of twists and turns, surprises and scandals. A journey that's left us questioning everything we thought we knew about the royal family. But the story of Meghan Markle is a reminder that in the world of royalty, nothing is as it seems. Appearances are deceiving, and the truth is often hidden behind a mask of smiles and protocol. But as we've seen, the truth has a way of coming out, no matter how hard it's hidden at SO. Let's keep the conversation going. Let's keep questioning, keep speculating, and keep uncovering the truth. Because in the end, it's not just about Meghan Markle or the royal family. It's about us and the stories we tell ourselves about power, image, and identity. The curtain may be closing on this chapter, but the show is far from over. The story of Meghan Markle will continue to unfold, and we'll be here to bring you every twist and turn. Stay tuned, stay curious, and stay engaged. The royal drama is far from over.